Good morning. Good morning. Gonna liven this room up a little bit. No money. No money, no singing, no jokes. I did sing at the last meeting, though. Did everyone see that? I didn't think it was too bad. However, when I got back to Baltimore about a week or so later, some of you did think it was a little bit on the bad side. And I was greeted in Baltimore by quite a few critique letters that you guys sent in. Some of you anonymously. I read a couple that actually had names, but I didn't bring those with me today. So I want to give you a feel for a day in my life in Baltimore after a big national meeting, and give you a little bit of a sampling of what I got to go back to Baltimore to read. Now, don't be nervous, those of you in the audience that may have partaken in the critiques. No implications, no fault, no culpability, no one getting named. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to name the city or the area of the country that each letter's from. Fair enough?
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I will do. I'll tell you what the area of the country or the city or state rhymes with. That way, if you can figure that out, God bless you. This first one comes from a state that rhymes with a make of car called a Lexus. Dear Jim, not quite as bad as I thought it would be. That may be the nicest one of the four I brought. The next one I want to read to you comes from a city, also a state, that rhymes with Sue Mork. Hey Sinatra, stick to your day job. Tough, tough, tough. Third one is from a city that rhymes with Fat Santa. Dear Jim, pretty nice job. ... Not. And lastly, we've got one here from a part of the country that rhymes with guest host. Not a lengthy letter either. Dear Jim, really? So I didn't know how to feel about that. Needless to say, it probably won't be singing for a while. Now we're here to talk today, to get on to the serious stuff, about the care continuum piece. And we have a bit of a call flow. And I think of goals of a call flow because in sales school we talk about tailoring a call. No two doctors are the same. We can't ask the same questions. We can't really open the same way. We can't present the same information. Doctors think differently. They have different mindsets. And to have the most productive call with each doctor, we have to figure out their mindset to really make the optimal flow to the call, which might be one way for one doctor and another way for another doctor. So the call flow, the goal of the early questions is to really paint a picture of the increasing parent frustration. Now, you were sent this piece, and we're going to show it shortly here. We want to determine when, in the timeline, a practitioner decides that there's a need for a clinical judgment. They've got to do something. Furthermore, we've got to determine what that judgment is. They see a timeline as far as a day number. Now, what are they going to do? And we ultimately once we have that conversation, should be able to bucket or categorize the practitioner into one of three mindsets. So here is the care continuum piece. And we can take a look at how the parent's moving from concern to more concern to utter frustration as we're going down the timeline. And when we're showing this or sharing this with a doctor, we want to be able to ask that doctor, Doctor, when a parent is dealing with a child, this is in your dialogue, with pediatric diarrhea, it's probably expected that the parent moves from concern to loss of patience to utter frustration as the days pass with really no resolution. At what point in that timeline, doctor, do you typically decide there's a need for a clinical judgment? And what is the step that you take at that point? Upon hearing that answer, we should know where they stand. And where they stand to me is in one of three buckets. You have doctors that treat. They initiate therapy despite an unknown cause. They could be treating with Alinia, for that matter. They could be treating with Flagyl. They could be treating with something else. But these are doctors that aren't waiting and waiting and waiting. They've got to give the parent something. We've got doctors also that begin the lab testing procedure. And I say procedure because there's a lot of steps involved in this. We've got to get the parent to go along with it. We have to hope that the child comes through. We have to get the parent to go along with it further. We have to do it several days in a row. A lot of work involved for a possibility of not even working out as far as decent results. And thirdly, we have that group of doctors that are just watch and wait as they continue to watch and wait. Those are the three buckets. Green light, yellow light, red light. If you know they're a green doctor that prescribes Alinia, you really don't need the care continuum piece. Why go through that and ask them at what point to make a clinical judgment if you know that they're kind of ruling out viral around day 6 or 7 and they're moving on to treating? You don't need to go through that piece. At this point, your approach can simply be to acknowledge their recent use and success, if in fact it is Alinia they're having success with, reinforce the good reasons that they're prescribing, and help them move toward expanding the prescribing. If they're green and they're prescribing Flagyl, let's say, or something else, you at least have a doctor that's willing to treat. Now you're just positioning Alinia as an option that's probably a better option, an easier option, I'll argue a safer option, certainly a more palatable option, a better option. Then you have the yellow doctors. These are the ones that begin lab testing procedure at some point on the continuum. And so now that you have them bucketed as a yellow doctor on future calls, you can discuss the challenges with standard tests, the limitations, the difficulty in patient compliance. And lastly, you have your red doctors. And your red doctors are the watch and waiters. At what point, doctor, along continuum, do you find a need for a clinical judgment? Well, I just continue to watch and wait. Maybe they're continuing to watch and wait to this point because there really haven't been any viable options. So your job at that point is to now present Alinia as a viable option that might move them away from being a habitual watch and waiter. You're going to find, when you look at the paper visual aid, it's easier to see this. When you look at the actual electronic visual aid, you can control it. And you're going to see that that first inside spread is all the warm and fuzzy topics. It's all about, on the left inside spread, the safety. It's all about, on the right inside spread, the ease of dosing. Doctors don't kick you out of the office and move the conversation along or end it when you're talking about topics that they really can't argue against. They like the fact that it's safe. They do think that the 3-2-1 is pretty good dosing. So let's keep the conversation going. Let's stay on the same path with them for a while and not lead with our chin with crypto or Giardia, but lead with topics that they're probably going to accept. So you'll see in your dialogues for both your green and your red doctors, safety and ease of dosing, lead the promotional conversation on your future calls. And I say future calls because if you need to utilize that care continuum piece, you're going to utilize it, and on the subsequent call, you're going to know where they're at as far as bucketing. You're going to know their mindset. You're going to then lead into the dialogue on the subsequent call. For the yellow doctor, who's already a lab tester, your discussion probably will not begin with safety and ease of dosing. It'll begin with that topic about testing's limitations and the pitfalls that they're running into with testing. That's their topic. Different mindset, different approach, different order. So we'll discuss these three different dialogue paths. We'll discuss these actually in your breakouts today. And just as doctors make clinical judgment, we're salespeople. We're asking you to make selling judgments. And it sometimes is on the fly. You're thinking you're headed in one path with a doctor in a certain direction. You hear that response, I need a different path now, not the path I planned. That's what sales is about. So, going forward, as far as the call plan, and this may seem a little confusing at first, but keep this in mind. If you know where a doctor's at, you've got them bucketed. You don't need the care continuum piece. If you don't, you need it. And on the next call, you'll take the optimal path as far as dialogue. So, for healthcare providers that treat, green doctors are doctors that treat. And better yet, treat with Alinia. You're going to promote Alinia in the P1 position, spiral chamber in P2, suprax, chew tabs in P3. You'll certainly acknowledge their use, their success with Alinia, and push to expand prescribing, maybe earlier use or more patients. For the record, you'll notice this in your dialogue, if they're treating with another option, you'll read through the green dialogue in your district breakouts. All you really need to do is find out what are some of the drawbacks of what you're currently utilizing. If you had a wish list, what would that consist of in a drug? And then here's some answers and position Alinia to fulfill that wish list. Because I'll bet they're going to say something safe, something easy to dose, something I don't have to compound. For healthcare providers that have not prescribed Alinia, and you really don't know where they're at as far as being bucketed, you don't know their mindset, you're going to promote a spiral chamber in the P1 position and Alinia in the P2 position for the first call in POA-2. You'll use the continuum piece because once that's done, once one use of that is over, you'll have them color-coded and you'll know your game plan for the future calls. And you'll transition from that piece to suprax chew tabs in the P3 position. Second call in POA-2, you will promote Alinia in the P1 position, spiral chamber in P2, suprax chew tabs in P3. Safety and dosing and mechanism of action are going to be things that are coming out of your mouth a lot more often now. We found that that resonated. Jay alluded to this. We have trainers that not only have experience in their own territories, but each of them have experience in probably 20 or 25 other territories. They came back independently to me with what's resonating in the field, what's not, and if we had to relaunch or seasonally launch, or knowing what we know now, launch, how would you handle the call flow? We know what resonates: safety, ease of dosing, the simple things. And this mechanism of action, there's some aura about it that doctors are intrigued with. I don't even know if they understand it completely. All right, I do know. They don't understand it completely. But that adds to its aura. That resonates. So in your district breakouts today, and your managers have a bit of a rough draft of this, you will practice the yellow dialogue. We had to choose one of the three. It's probably the most involved. But please don't slight the green or the red dialogue, because you've got those watching waiters out there that I want to be after with a great new option, the red doctors. You've got those doctors that are inclined to treat, and I want to be out there with a better option. We do have some of the pieces that you'll see also this morning that Adriana's going to share with you, that Chris Faith is going to share with you, that Michael Mottle's going to share with you, Brent Bates. So in that district breakout, you're going to closer look at the infection checklist, the risk factor tear pad, the dosing application, and you'll have some open discussion in your districts regarding P1, P2, and P3 calls, and we'll also give you some examples of bridging Alinia to Inspire. You got it?